the medico-legal aspect of disturbance of mentality. Okay? So please refer to your book because our discussions would be mainly on the background, the definition of terms, enumerations. Okay? So for comprehensive discussion, read your book. Okay? Insanity. What is insanity? Insanity may be defined in its sociology, medical, and legal concept. In the sociology viewpoint, insanity is the persistent inability through mental causes to adapt oneself to the ordinary environment. It is the loss of power of the individual to regulate his action and conduct according to the rules of society in which he moves. Okay? So, in ordinary term, it means the person is crazy. The person is insane. He cannot function in society. Okay? He loses the ability to integrate himself to society. Okay? Insanity in law covers nothing more than the relation of a person and the particular act which is the subject of investigation. Legal importance of the determination of insanity. So under the Civil Code, insanity is a restriction on the capacity of a natural person to act. Okay? Article 38 of the new Civil Code provides that minority, insanity, or imbecility, the state of being deaf-mute, prodigality, and civil interdiction are mere restriction on capacity to act and do not exempt the incapacitated person from certain obligations as when the latter arise from his acts or from property relations such as easement. Okay? Being insane only extends to the person's capacity to act. Okay? However, if that person has all his actions, okay, has legal implication, but under the law, he can be exempt in certain circumstances. Okay? Insanity modifies or limits the capacity of a natural person to act. So, again, under Article 39 of the new Civil Code, the following circumstances, among others, modify or limit capacity to act, like age, insanity, imbecility, state of being a deaf-mute, and the consequences of this circumstance are governed in this code, other codes, the rules of court, and in special laws. Capacity to act is not limited on account of religion, belief, or political opinion. Okay? Once again, the law only limits the person's capacity to act if he is insane or if he is a minor or a deaf-mute and other conditions that the law provides. Now, insanity at the time of marriage of any or both parties is a ground for the annulment of marriage. Okay? So, under the law, insanity can make the marriage voidable. Okay? It can be subject to annulment. Under Article 85 of the new Civil Code, it provides that a marriage may be annulled for any of the following causes existing at the time of marriage. That either party was of unsound mind, unless such party, after coming to reason, freely cohabited with the other as husband or wife. Okay? So, under this provision of law, if it is found out that your spouse is insane at the time of marriage, okay, then your marriage can be annulled, or okay, you can go to court, file an annulment suit. Okay? However, if after learning that your spouse is crazy or insane, you still live with your spouse, then the defect of law is cured. Okay? So, the marriage becomes now legitimized. Okay? Under this provision of law. Okay? Another legal implication that disqualifies an insane person is the execution of a will. Okay? Last will and testament. Under the law, witness to a will must be of sound mind. Under Article 820 of the New Civil Code, it provides any person of sound mind and of the age of 18 years or more and not blind, deaf, or dumb, and able to read and write may be a witness to the execution of a will. Okay? Another point is insanity of the testator or the one making the will is ground for disallowance of a will. Okay? Or cancellation of a will. Under Article 839 of the New Civil Code, it provides, the will shall be disallowed in any of the following cases. If the testator was insane or otherwise mentally incapable of making a will at the time of its execution, okay? At the time of making the last will and testament, then it can be disallowed by law if that person who executed the same is crazy or insane, okay? Another legal implication that affects an insane person is when he gives consent or enter into a contract, okay? Under the law, an insane cannot give consent to a contract. Article 1327 of the New Civil Code provides the following cannot give consent to a contract. First, unemancipated minors. Second, insane or demented person. And deaf-mute who do not know how to write. Now, let's go to the Revised Penal Code. Under the Revised Penal Code, insanity exempts a person from criminal liability. Article 12 of the Revised Penal Code provides the circumstance which exempts from criminal liability an insane person. Okay? So, the provision provides an imbecile or an insane person unless the latter has acted with discernment. A person who becomes insane after final sentence are exempt by law. Okay? Article 79 of the Revised Penal Code provides for suspension of the execution and service of the penalties in case of insanity when a convict shall become insane or an imbecile after final sentence has been pronounced. The execution of said sentences shall be suspended only with regard to the personal penalty. Okay? So, if the accused becomes insane or who is insane already or who is an imbecile, then the personal penalties are suspended like imprisonment. Okay? So, that person may be subjected to other curative or rehabilitative actions. For example, you place that person in a mental facility. Okay? Another is when the person acted during lucid interval, he can be criminally liable. Okay? So, if a person, because if he is under lucid interval or he is of sound mind, then he can be criminally liable. If at any time the convict shall recover his reason, his sentence shall be executed unless the penalty shall have prescribed in accordance with the provision of the Revised Penal Code. So if the person, an insane person, recovers from insanity, then he will serve the sentence of the court. The respective provision of the section shall also be observed if the insanity or imbecility occurs while the convict is serving his sentence. Okay? In the rules of court, a guardian on the person of the insane must be appointed. Okay. Rule 92, Section 2 of the Rules of Court provides the meaning of the word competent. Under this rule, the word incompetent includes those who are of unsound mind, okay? Those who are insane, those who are crazy, even though they have lucid interval, okay? Even though they acted sanely, okay? So, they are disqualified. Rule 93, Section 1 of the Rules of Court provides who may petition for appointment of guardian for a resident and a relative, friend, other person on behalf of a minor incompetent who has no competent or lawful guardian. An insane cannot be a witness in court. So this is another legal impediment or legal implication for insane persons. Rule 130, Section 19 of the Rules of Court provides physical disqualification following the person's insanity. A person who is insane cannot be a witness in court. Those who are unsound mind at the time of their conduction for examination to such a degree as to be incapable of perceiving and making known their perception to others. Now, let's go to mental disorders. What is a mental disorder? A mental disorder, also called a mental illness or psychiatric disorder, is a behavioral or mental pattern that causes significant distress or impairment of personal functioning. Such features may be persistent, relapsing, and remitting, or occur as a single episode. Many disorders have been described with signs and symptoms that vary widely between specific disorders. Such disorders may be diagnosed by a mental health professional. Okay? Mental disorder implies that the mental functioning of a person is affected. Okay? There is no order. There is disorder in his mental capacity. What are some manifestations of mental disorders? The condition of insanity cannot be considered clinically by the manifestation of one sign or symptom, but it is essential to appreciate the condition of the mind as a whole. Okay? You must look at it holistically in its entirety. Although certain behavior may be observed in certain types of insanity, they may also be observed in the clinically non-insane. Okay? So, signs and symptoms of mental illness like illogical thinking, nervousness or high anxiety, apathy or loss of drive, decline in functioning at school, work, and etc., major or erratic shifts in mood, withdrawal from interest, relationship, or social responsibilities, like in the case of depression, okay? Heightened sensitivity, changes in sleep patterns or appetites, like in anorexia nervosa, problems thinking clearly or cogently, okay? So, these are the common signs and symptoms of mental illness. Now, factors having positive correlation with the development of mental disorder. Heredity, most frequent. A history that reveals mental illness manifested by ascendance. Okay? It is passed down from generation to generation. Incestuous marriage. Blood incompatibility of parents. A maternal infection during early stage of pregnancy. Then impaired vitality, mental worry, grief, physical strain, unhygienic surroundings, infection, birth trauma may predispose a person to mental disorder. And then poor moral training and breeding. It is according to the social status, particularly on free will, self-control, or undesirable association with other persons, and etc. Then psychic factors like emotional disturbance such as love, hatred, passion, disappointment. Okay? So all of this affects the mental characteristic of a person. Then physical factor like toxins, okay? Produced by excessive formation or deficient elimination of waste, product of metabolism, by microbic infection or excessive use of a certain drugs, okay? Or non-toxic like exhaustion resulting from mental strain, illness, cerebral hemorrhage, trauma on the skull that affects the brain, okay? So these are the two factors, the non-toxic and the toxic. Okay, now let's go to disorder of cognition or knowing. Cognitive disorders, also known as neurocognitive disorders, are a category of mental health disorders that primarily affect cognitive abilities, including learning, memory, perception, and problem solving. Neurocognitive disorders include delirium and mild and major neurocognitive disorder, previously known as dementia. They are defined by deficits in cognitive ability that are acquired as opposed to developmental. So typically represent decline and may have an underlying brain pathology. Okay? So this is a disorder of memory, of knowing, okay? As shown in this illustration, okay? Functional cognitive disorder. Age less than 60 years old, attends clinic alone, symptoms non-progressive over the years, resistant to reassurance despite normal test results, significant self-reported symptoms but preserved everyday functioning, normal neuroimaging and blood test, normal or invalid results on neuropsychology test, and then memory perfectionism. Okay, this affects the ability to perceive, ability to know. Okay, like for example, if a person is delirious or a person has dementia in which he has no short-term memory, only long-term memory. Next, disorder in perception, sensory distortion, constant real perceptual object which is perceived in a distorted way. Okay? So, the way a person sees an object is distorted. Next is sensory deception, new perception that may occur that may or may not be in response to external stimuli. Okay? So, there is a misinformation towards that object. Okay? As you can see in this illustration, abnormal perception leads to sensory distortion and then sensory deceptions. And then, for example, color intensity, shape and size, motion in general, quality, location, uniqueness, all of these are affected, okay? They are distorted, okay? The stimuli are not the same of how the person perceived that external stimuli. And then stimuli from perceived object, mental image, then false perception, okay? There is distortion that leads to false perception, okay? As you can see in these pictures down below, okay? These are the examples. For example, a person thinks that there are ants in his or her hand, okay? Or he can hear objects talking, can read small books, and so on and so forth. Illusion, a false interpretation of an external stimulus. It may be manifested with a sense of sight, hearing, taste, touch, and smell. Okay, this is another mental condition in which the person has no touch in reality. Okay, fantasy, illusion. Example, dragonfly may be considered a vampire bat. Okay, A whistle sound may be considered a bomb explosion, okay? Misinformation, again, through the senses. Types of illusion. Complete illusion. This depends on misreading words in newspapers or missing misprints because we read a word as if it were capable. Affect illusion. This arises in the context of particular mood state. Pareidolia. Vivid illusions occur without the patient making any effort, are the result of excessive fantasy, thinking, and a vivid visual imagery. Okay, as you can see in this illustration down below, in the middle, that's the surface of the moon. Okay, and people are thinking that there's a face. As a matter of fact, it's just a rock. Okay. Hallucination. An erroneous perception without external object of stimulus. So there is no external stimuli, okay, present. Some types of hallucination: visual, seeing things although not present; auditory, hearing voices in absolute silence; olfactory, false perception of smell; gustatory, false perception of taste; tactile, false perception of touch, as feeling that a woman is creeping on the skin; kinesthetic, false perception of movement; hypnagogic, false sensory perception occurring midway between falling asleep and being awake, so the person is obtunded; Lilliputian, perception of object as reduced in its size. Okay? So, the illustration again shows these examples. Now, let's go to disorder of memory. Dementia, a form of insanity resulting from degeneration or disorder of the brain characterized by general mental weakness or forgetfulness or loss of coherence and total inability to reason, but not accompanied by delusion or uncontrollable impulse. Okay, so in dementia, this is a degenerative disorder whereby there is a constant loss of short-term memory. Okay, what is left is the long-term memory. Okay, symptoms and signs of dementia. You find yourself struggling to remember recent events or dates. You find it hard to follow conversations or TV shows. You find yourself forgetting the names of friends or everyday objects. You find yourself repeating words and forgetting what you were saying. You find difficulties thinking and responding. You feel anxious, depressed, or angry and notice behavioral changes. You feel a decline in the ability to talk, read, or write. You feel confused even when in a familiar environment. Okay? Now, types of dementia. Acute dementia, a form of temporary dementia occurring in young people and induced by conditions likely to produce that state like malnutrition, overwork, dissipation, or too rapid growth. Next is dementia paralytica or general paralysis of the insane, degeneration of physical, intellectual, and moral power leading to paralysis or cirrhosis of the brain. Next is dementia praecox or schizophrenia, dementia of the adolescents and characterized by loss of memory. Next is senile dementia, occurring in advanced age and characterized by loss of memory, with childish and silly behavior and physical degeneration. Next is toxic dementia, characterized by weakness of mind or feeble cerebral activity, resulting from continuous administration or use of toxic chemicals. Okay? So these are types of dementias which affects the brain of a person. Okay? Depends upon the origin. For example, in toxic dementia, by use of chemicals. Okay? In senile dementia, occurs as you age. Okay? In schizophrenia or dementia precox, starts in the adolescence period. Okay? And then there's a characterized by gradual loss of memory. Okay? So, just a matter of reading, guys. Please refer to your amnesia or loss of memory. Types: anterograde amnesia or loss of memory of recent event, and then retrograde amnesia or loss of memory of past events and observed in trauma of the head injury. Okay, so there is a force applied or that happened. As you can see here in the illustration, it differentiates retrograde amnesia from anterograde amnesia. Okay, so in retrograde amnesia, it focuses on the past. Okay, preserved memories and then lost memories. And then anterograde amnesia, it looks to the future. Okay, for like new information and so on and so forth. Now let's go to the disorder of content of thought. Delusion: a false or erroneous belief in something which is not a fact. A person suffering from delusion is not always insane. Okay? So, delusion of grandeur, delirium of grandeur, megalomania, or folie de grandeur. It is an erroneous belief that one is in possession of great power, wealth, wisdom, physical strength, and etc. Okay? It's like a narcissistic feeling that you are very rich, you are very handsome, and so on and so forth. Okay? Next is delusion of persecution. A false belief that one is being persecuted. One may feel poisoned and prepare for their coming end. Next is delusion of reference. One thinks that he or she is always the subject matter of conversation, news, speech, or action, although it's not a fact. Okay? It's all in the mind. Next is delusion of self-accusation. A false belief to have committed a crime or hurt the feelings of others. Next is delusion of infidelity. A false belief derived that one's lover is unfaithful, although he or she is chaste and tries to assault him or her. Okay? Classic example are the very jealous partners. Okay? Next is nihilistic delusion. A false belief that there is no world, that no one does not exist, and that his body is dead. Okay? This is an extreme type of delusion. Next, delusion of poverty. A false belief that one is financially ruined, has no money, is starving, sick, or even dead. Okay? I think right now, this delusion is very common, okay? Due to the pandemic, most people are financially ruined because they have no work and their loans or payables are piling up, okay? Next is delusion of control. A false feeling that one is being controlled by other persons. Next is hypochondrial delusion. A false feeling that one is suffering from an incurable disease. Some parts of body are not functioning and etc. And then delusions of depression. Patient experiences feelings of uneasiness, worthlessness, and futility. Okay? And because of this feeling, that person cannot integrate or function well in society. Okay? Next is delusion of negation. Feeling that some parts of the body are missing. Okay? Now, let's go to obsession. Okay, very common in our life. Okay, it is a thought and impulse which continually occur in the person's mind despite all his or her attempts to keep them out. Okay, a person may lock the door of his bedroom and go to bed. He will keep checking if the door is locked, may repeat the act the whole night. Okay? Sometimes it is referred to as obsessive compulsive condition. Okay? It is a condition of the mind bordering on sanity and insanity, sometimes associated with fear, and usually occurs when suffering from nervous exhaustion. Okay? Now, let's go to disorder on the chain of thoughts. Thought disorders are usually diagnosed when a person's behavior or speaking indicates problematic, illogical, or incoherent patterns of thinking. Thinking normally involves three parts: thinking about something, stringing thoughts together on what you are thinking about, and finally, the delivery or flow of a thought pattern. A thought disorder disrupts one or more aspects of the thought process. A thought disorder is distinct from speech disorder. Okay? So, the process of thought is disrupted. It is different from speech disorder whereby the talking itself or speaking itself is affected, which occurs as a result of difficulty with speech patterns and production, rather than an underlying problem with thought processes. Schizophrenia is a type of thought disorder, and delusions, false belief that a person persists in believing despite conflicting evidence, can also be caused by thought disorders. Okay? So, in thought disorders, it is the process of thought that is affected, which results to ineffective lifestyle of the person. Thought disorder involves impairment in the form or manner in which a speaker presents thoughts to a listener and is characterized by clinical signs such as illogical thinking, loose associations, incoherence, poverty of content of speech, tangentiality, circumstantiality, and others. Thought disorders represents abnormal organization, control, and processing of thinking. Okay? For example, a person talking but not making sense. Okay? And it is happening all the time. Okay? So, that is a classic example of thought disorder. And then, improper use of semantic and relational aspects of speech and poor use of linguistic context to process and produce speech. Although regarded as a hallmark of schizophrenia, thought disorder, a normal developmental phenomenon in young children, is also found in pediatric neurobehavioral disorders, including like attention deficit hyperactivity disorders or ADHD, high functioning autism, complex partial seizures, and childhood absence epilepsy. Okay? Thought disorders can be present in these conditions. So, when people are diagnosed with a thought disorder, they are often diagnosed with some other condition that causes or contributes to the disordered thinking. So, there is an underlying condition, okay? Common symptoms of thought disorders include rapid, incoherent, or illogical speech, frequent interruption in a person's train of thought, belief that a person or entity has removed the person's thought, delusions and false beliefs, extreme tangential speech pattern during which a person rapidly discusses several apparently unrelated topics. Okay? So there is a barrage of topics which are unrelated. Inability to follow a logical train of thought or to clearly tell a story or convey an idea. So people with schizophrenia commonly demonstrate symptoms of thought disorders, but other mental health issues such as bipolar, schizotypal personality, and psychotic episodes can also produce symptoms of a thought disorder. Treatment often involves psychotherapy and in some cases may include antipsychotic medications or mood stabilizer. Okay? So there is a treatment, psychotherapy, and by the use of antipsychotic drugs. Psychotherapy is beneficial to individuals experiencing symptoms of a thought disorder because it allows a therapist to address behavioral and emotional issues that may be linked to or exacerbate the thought disorder. This type of treatment helps improve the quality of life for the person experiencing a thought disorder and may be part of a collaborative treatment approach. Okay? So, the doctor will conduct a holistic care approach to the person who has that condition. Sometimes thought disorders can put people who experience them in danger. A person might, for example, believe something is safe that is unsafe. In reality, it is unsafe, okay? But in their mind, they thought it is safe. Engage in risky behavior or act on false belief that put others in danger. When a thought disorder interferes with safety, people with the condition may require psychiatric hospitalization. Okay? So, as illustrated in the picture, in the center, there is the core belief. And then a triangle which consists of yourself, your future, and others. And then the outside is a circle which is there's behavior, feelings, and thoughts. Okay? It's a process. Next is disorders of volition or cognition or disorders of doing. Impulsion or impulse or compulsion. Sudden and irresistible force compelling a person to the conscious performance of some action without motive or forethought. Okay? They can't help it. Okay? They want to do something. For example, kleptomania. They want to get that thing. Okay? Not thinking if their actions are with legal implications or not. Person has no power to control it. However bad the consequence may be. So types of impulsion or compulsion neurosis. Pyromania, an irresistible impulse to set things on fire. Okay, that's dangerous. But in the mind of that person, he can't help it. Doesn't know the significance of it. Pyromania is an impulse control disorder in which individuals repeatedly fail to resist impulses to deliberately start fires in order to relieve tension or for that instant gratification. Another disorder, kleptomania, an irresistible impulse to steal articles of not much value. Okay? Kleptomania is the inability to refrain from the urge for stealing items and usually done for reasons other than personal use or financial gain. Next is mutilomania, an irresistible impulse to maim animals. Next is dipsomania, an irresistible impulse to indulge in intoxication either in alcohol or drugs. And then repeated intoxication for a number of years with alcohol or drugs which is voluntary is not dipsomania. Okay? Because in dipsomania, the urge is irresistible. However, if it's voluntary, you are an alcoholic, so it is not a mental condition. One having power to refrain from the use of intoxicating liquor or drugs and who becomes intoxicated voluntarily is not dipsomaniac. Dipsomania. Okay? An illustration. Next condition is homicidal impulse, an irresistible inclination or impulse to commit homicide, prompted usually by insane delusion, either as a necessity of self-defense or avenging for justice, or as to patient being the appointed instrument of a Superman justice. Next is sex impulse. This includes all irresistible acts of sexual perversion, the feeling resulting from the urge to gratify sexual impulses. And then suicidal impulse, a strong desire to terminate one's life. This impulse may be present in acute depression. So, here are the illustrations, okay? Homicidal impulse, psycho killers. Suicidal impulse may be due to depression. Sex impulse, sexual urges. Find versus true insanity. Find insanity develops suddenly, while true insanity develops insidiously. Okay? Takes time. Usually with the observance of some predisposing to an existing cause, if careful history of the case is taken. There is no peculiar facial expression in feigned insanity, which is commonly observed in true insanity. Symptoms of insanity may only be observed in feigned insanity when the person is conscious that he is under observation and becomes normal when he is alone and unobserved. There is no such remission of symptoms in true insanity. In feigned insanity, the symptoms may be complete, numerous, and may clinically refer to a specific diseases. Violent exertion of feigned insanity usually leads to an early exhaustion, while in true insanity, the patient can withstand any sign of exhaustion and fatigue. Okay, it's like in feigned insanity, it is an acute condition, while in true insanity, it's a chronic condition. A feigned insane usually observes rules of personal hygiene and does not look dirty and filthy. A true insane is filthy, dresses dirtily, and does not observe hygiene. Okay? Steps in diagnostic procedure. If you are the physician, you must take note of the following. Family history involves medical history of parents and other family members. Also involves the history of the nervous diseases. Then personal history involves childhood conditions, drugs, sexual status, occupation. Next is physical examination. And then instrumentation, okay, by use of equipments like and devices like X-ray, electroencephalogram, CT scan, and so on and so forth. Then mental examination involves psychological testing and psychiatric evaluation. Okay? So, for that topic, please refer to your book. Okay? We still have other topics to discuss. And as you can observe, our discussion is mainly on the background of the cases. Okay? So, please refer to your book for more detailed and comprehensive discussion, because our discussion is mainly on definition of terms, enumeration. Okay? So, if you have any questions, feel free to ask me or message me. Thank you, and God bless us all.